Hi guys, this is Milan Winfield-Kana presenting for Group 27.
Hi guys, this is Isla Sophia Lapin presenting for Group 27. Hope you guys enjoy. In this presentation, I evaluate Qantas using core producer 3 concepts from microeconomics. I focus on two areas from question 1i. First, I analyse its core structure using the distinction between short-run and long-run costs, where some inputs are fixed while others are variable. Second, I explain how changes in the price of variable inputs, such as fuel, affect marginal costs and therefore profit. Finally, I assess whether Qantas experiences economies of scale by examining how its long-run average cost curves behave as output increases. In the short run, Qantas face fixed inputs, mainly capital like aircraft and infrastructure. These contribute to fixed costs, which declines per unit as output increases due to average fixed cost spreading. By contrast, inputs such as fuel, labour and airport charges are variable inputs, which determine average variable costs and marginal costs. The firm's profitability in the short run depends on producing where price is at least equal to marginal cost, and preferably where price exceeds average total cost. When the price of variable input increases, for example, when fuel prices increase, this increases variable cost per unit, which causes the marginal cost curve to shift upwards at every output level. Under profit maximisation, output is chosen where MC equals MR, marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So higher marginal cost forces either a reduction in output or a higher equilibrium price, depending on demand elasticity. Therefore, variable input price shocks directly affect profitability by altering the firm's optimal output choice. According to the profit condition, profit equals total revenue minus total cost. Profit depends on how total cost responds to input price changes. In the short run, a firm continues producing as long as price covers average variable cost, even if fixed cost is not fully covered. In the long run, price must also cover average total cost, otherwise the firm exits. Therefore, if rising variable costs push average variable costs or average total costs above price, continued operation is no longer viable. In the long run, all inputs are variable, so the firm adjusts along its long-run average cost curve. If average cost falls as output increases, the firm experiences economies of scale, where larger output spreads cost more efficiently. If average cost eventually rises, this reflects diseconomies of scale, such as congestion or management efficiency. For Qantas, the key economic question is whether increasing output measured in seek kilometres allows it to operate on the downward sloping part of LRAC. To conclude, Qantas behaves like a standard firm within producer theory. In the short run, variable input shocks such as fuel price increases shift marginal cost upwards, which affects the optimal output choice. In the long run, profitability depends on operating where long-run average cost is falling, meaning that economies of scale are present. Ultimately, profit is maximised where marginal cost equals marginal revenue, subject to the condition that price covers average cost.
Economies of scale occurs when a firm's average cost per unit falls as its output increases. This happens in large firms because they are able to spread their fixed costs over a greater level of production. In the airline industry, scale is a key driver to cost efficiency. Qantas operates in a capital-intensive environment where aircraft purchases, maintenance facilities, pilot training, and airport fees represent enormous fixed expenditures. As total passenger kilometres increase, these costs are shared across more additional units, being flights and passengers. As Qantas increases its output on major domestic routes such as Sydney to Melbourne and Sydney to Brisbane, its marginal cost remains below the market price, enabling sustained profitability and allowing the firm to set fares strategically above cost without losing customers. This reflects imperfect competition, where the firm faces a downward sloping demand curve rather than behaving as a price taker. Consequently, economies of scale acts as a significant barrier to entry, since potential competitors would need to operate at very high output levels to achieve comparable cost efficiency. This cost advantage protects Qantas's dominant position and reinforces its market power within the Australian aviation industry.
In this section, I'm examining Qantas market power strictly through an industrial economics lens. I'll compare its behaviour in the domestic aviation market, which functions as a highly concentrated oligopoly, to its position internationally, where the competitive landscape is much more fragmented. The key focus is on how differences in the market structure influence Qantas' ability to price above marginal cost and extract economic rents. From a market structure perspective, Qantas effectively operates in two different equilibrium environments. Domestically, capacity is controlled by only two major firms, Qantas Group and Virgin, creating a duopoly. Internationally, however, the firm transitions into a differentiated global oligopoly with multiple state-backed rivals. So the degree of pricing discretion available to Qantas is significantly conditioned by elasticity and contestability differences between the two markets. Domestically, Qantas benefits from a highly favourable competitive configuration with approximately 60 to 65% market share, including Jetstar. Entry barriers are both structural and regulatory, particularly in the form of airport slot scarcity and sunk capital costs associated with fleet acquisition. Demand is also relatively inelastic on major trunk routes dominated by corporate travel, enabling sustained price cost margins above competitive levels. Effectively consistent with oligopolistic rent extraction. In addition to structural barriers, Qantas leverages behaviour lock-in mechanisms via its frequent flyer programme, with over 15 million members. It functions as a cause-switching cost, even if competing fares are marginally lower. Consumers face a perceived utility loss from abandoning accumulated status or points. In microeconomic terms, this creates an artificial reduction in cross-price elasticity and increases customer retention independent of price competition. The international segment exhibits a fundamentally different price-setting environment. Here, Qantas competes against globally efficient carriers such as Emirates, Singapore Airlines and Qatar Airlines, many of which benefit from government cost advantages or superior hub economies of scale. Demand is far more elastic, as long-haul passengers engage in broader price and service comparison across these carriers. As a result, Qantas transitions from a price maker to a price matcher, exhibiting behaviour closer to a disciplined oligopolist rather than a dominant. Rather than attempting to outcompete foreign rivals directly, Qantas strategically internalises competition via alliances. Its joint venture with Emirates effectively transforms a rival into a partner, enabling coordinated capacity and shared revenue rather than mutual erosion through fare wars. Economically, this can be interpreted as a form of tactical collision, sanctioned through regulatory approval, which allows Qantas to maintain relevance internationally without incurring the cost of full network duplication. Regulatory oversight from the ACCC does exist, particularly around fare transparency and slot usage. However, enforcement operates reactively rather than preemptively, meaning Qantas retains substantial latitude in strategic pricing. Slot allocation rules also privilege incumbents, reinforcing first mover advantage and suppressing contestability. So while regulation moderates abuse, it does not fully eliminate the structural advantage that underpin Qantas's market power. To conclude, Qantas demonstrates dual market behaviour, consistent with industrial economics theory. In the domestic segment, it behaves as a dominant oligopolist, protected by high sunk costs, slot scarcity and consumer lock-in effects. Internationally, it exhibits constrained pricing power due to heightened elasticity and competitive power play, relying instead on alliances as a substitute for unilateral dominance. The fundamental insight is that Qantas profitability and conduct cannot be generalised across its network. It is structurally privileged at home, but strategically adaptive abroad.
So this is my response to analysing Qantas's pricing strategies and the practice of price discrimination. Qantas operates in markets where it possesses considerable market power, meaning it faces a downward sloping demand curve and can influence the price of airfares rather than taking the price as a given. This means that the firm maximises profit where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, setting a price above marginal cost to capture economic profit. Because air travel services are non-transferable and time-specific, resale or arbitrage between consumers is effectively impossible, a key condition for price discrimination. Qantas therefore has both the market power and ability to separate buyers that make price discrimination feasible. Its overall pricing strategy aims to convert consumer surplus into producer surplus by charging high prices to passengers with inelastic demand and lower prices to those with elastic demand, aligning with the theory of monopolistic pricing. The most prominent form of price discrimination used by Qantas is third-degree price discrimination, where distinct consumer groups are charged different prices based on their price elasticity of demand. Business travellers who have inelastic demand because they value flexibility and timing over price pay higher fares for flexible or last-minute bookings. Leisure travellers, by contrast, are more price sensitive and face lower fares when they book well in advance or accept less flexible conditions. In each segment, Qantas applies the condition marginal revenue equals marginal cost to determine the profit maximising output and price. This segmentation allows the firm to increase total revenue relative to uniform pricing by allocating more capacity to the elastic market and at lower prices and less capacity to the inelastic market at higher prices. In doing so, Qantas efficiently captures additional consumer surplus while expanding total output, partially reducing the deadweight loss associated with monopoly pricing. Qantas also engages in second-degree price discrimination. Here, customers reveal their willingness to pay through the options they choose. Instead of charging different groups directly, the firm offers a menu of pricing plans and service levels that induce customers to self-select. This is mainly done through their fare classes like economy, business, and first class. These variations in product quality allows Qantas to segment customers without explicitly identifying them. The economic principle behind this is incentive compatibility. Each customer type chooses the package design for their level of willingness to pay. This practice enables Qantas to extract a larger share of consumer surplus and move closer to the revenue outcome it would achieve under perfect price discrimination, without the need for perfect price information about each traveller's preferences. Beyond direct fair pricing, Qantas employs bundling and two-part tariffs as a part of its broader pricing strategy. Bundling occurs when the airline combines flights with related services, such as lounge access, loyalty points, or accommodation, to raise total revenue and attract customers with diverse preferences. Bundling is most effective when consumer valuations are negatively correlated, meaning one passenger values the flight more while another values the add-ons more, allowing Qantas to increase total sales by selling combined packages. Similarly, Qantas resembles a two-part tariff, where consumers pay a fixed access cost and then a per-use charge when redeeming or purchasing a flight. This allows Qantas to capture both the access surplus and usage surplus, increasing profit while encouraging repeat purchases and brand loyalty. Qantas' pricing strategy and discriminatory practices illustrate how a firm with market power can increase profitability by tailoring prices to consumer characteristics. In theory, price discrimination transfers consumer surplus to producer surplus, raising firm profit but not necessarily harming efficiency. When it allows lower value consumers to access services that would otherwise be unaffordable, it can improve allocative efficiency and reduce deadweight loss. However, when discrimination excessively favors high-paying customers or restricts competition, it may raise equity and welfare concerns. In Qantas's case, sophisticated segmentation and loyalty systems maximize revenue while keeping flights relatively accessible across the market segments, demonstrating how economic theory of pricing with market power applies to a real-world airline with complex and diversified demand.
Qantas's new direct ultra-long haul routes represent a distinct market regiment where substitutes, such as one-stop flights through Asia or the Middle East, are not perfect replacements. This gives Qantas control over pricing, as it faces a downward sloping demand curve and can choose both price and output. Being the only firm offering these direct flights means Qantas can act as a route-level monopolist, setting both price above marginal cost to maximise profits. Strong barriers to entry, such as the need for long-haul operational capability, airport slot limitations, and high capital costs, protect this position and sustain monopoly power in the short run.
Several economic factors explain why Qantas can sustain monopoly power on these ultra-long-haul routes. Significant economies of scale make it more efficient for a single firm to supply the market, as average costs fall with higher output. High fixed costs act as natural barriers, discouraging entry. On the demand side, brand loyalty and switching costs reduce the price elasticity of demand. Customers are less likely to switch carriers. Additionally, route regulations and landing slot constraints limit entry by foreign airlines. Together, these factors reinforce Qantas's dominant position and enable it to earn positive economic profits while limiting competitive pressure.
In this monopoly setting, Qantas chooses its prices and output to maximise profit, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, leading to a price above marginal cost. This results in an elective inefficiency because fewer seats are sold than in a competitive market, and some potential passengers are priced out, creating a deadweight loss. However, monopoly profits can also promote dynamic efficiency by incentivizing innovation. Qantas's decision to introduce ultra-long-haul flights expands consumer choice and pushes industry boundaries, demonstrating how monopoly power can generate both welfare losses and long-term efficiency gains.
Although Qantas may enjoy monopoly power in the short term, this position is unlikely to last forever. According to the concept of contestability, even the threat of new entrants can constrain pricing behaviour. If other carriers eventually introduce similar ultra-haul services or improve one-stop alternatives, Qantas will face a stronger competition. As a result, prices will gradually fall towards the level of long-run average cost and economic profits will decline. In the long run, the market tends toward greater efficiency as competition intensifies and monopoly power erodes.
Thank you for listening.
This has been Group 27's presentation.